So let's talk about something you may or may not have heard of. It's the prisoner's dilemma and the implications that that has for our regular lives, how we run society and how we run our friendships and communities and families. If you're not familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, you can probably find better explanations of it elsewhere. There's even a game show in the UK, I believe, based on the prisoner's dilemma. I'll give you the really short version, which is hopefully accurate, but look elsewhere for better explanations. And it all goes in with game theory, but it really is related to society as a whole. So I'm going to try and pull all that together. Let's say you have two prisoners, okay? Now, let's assume they're accused of something. I don't even know if it matters if they're guilty or not, but if you know, and they're being interrogated by the police, they've been arrested, and if both prisoners claim the other one is innocent and they're innocent, then they have no evidence. The police have no evidence against them, and then they get off. They both win. Which I guess is bad if they're criminals, really, but let's assume they're falsely accused. That's funner. Gives you more empathy for the prisoners. And if one of them says, yeah, that guy did do it, but I didn't do it, then he'll get off. If they both say the other guy did it, then they're both implicated. There's a witness against both of them, and they both lose. They both go to prison. And so there's a motivation for both of them to say, no, didn't do it, which is generally a good thing to do with cops, whether you're guilty or not, I suppose. Although if you shouldn't do things that are actually bad, but some crimes aren't actually bad. It's the law itself is criminal. You know, like you got lots of people in jail for pot and stuff. And even in places where pot's now legal, there's people still in jail because they changed the law, magically turning people who formerly were criminals into innocent people. It's really pretty terrible. Anyway, so we could imagine that they're both arrested for pot or something. Anyway, so the motivation of each person is to not go to prison. And so the best way to increase your chance of not going to prison is to say the other person did the crime. Because if they say you did the crime, then you go to jail anyway. If they say you didn't do the crime, then they go to jail and you wait. If they say that you're innocent and you say they're guilty, then they get arrested, you go free for sure. So the ideal thing to do for both of you is if you both say the other person's innocent. But you can't trust the other person, and the other three outcomes are you go to prison. Wait, is there three other ones? Anyway, so what we want to do, if we translate this into a social setting or a society, is we want to gather the pro-social people who always do the thing that is best for everyone, even if they risk getting screwed over themselves. Because then you have people who are always going to create win-win situations. We can translate this into, whether someone leaves garbage. Because to leave the garbage, you got rid of your garbage, but you created a problem for someone else. You want to gather people who don't create problems for other people. And so you want to create a bunch of people who, even though it costs them to maintain and carry their own garbage, they don't give in to the temptation to benefit themselves while damaging others. And this is true in business relations, where you could screw over your business partner. You have couples where people are like, well, I'll go sleep with somebody else against our social agreement, our monogamous social agreement or something. And I don't want them to, though. And so you don't tell them, you lie. You win, they lose. And then, of course, you eventually will get found out, and yourself. So you'll get caught because you catch yourself. And then you don't trust people as much because you're doing bad things. Bad people don't trust people as much. Although I don't trust people much because I've been fucked over. because I've been on the losing side of the prisoner's dilemma many times. Hundreds and hundreds, because I hosted so many people. So I stopped hosting people. I stopped hosting them because I can't tell which are the people who are going to continually make win-win decisions, looking for win-win situations. And that's the people I want to collect. Those are the only people I want to collect. And I want to serve them and give to them and enrich their lives. That's how we get a gift economy. That's how we become free of tyranny. We don't accept oppression. This stuff goes all the way up to governmental levels, where, the kind of people who are in government are often people looking to fuck other people over. In fact, government attracts sociopaths. It rarely attracts public servants. Like, you look at that guy, he recently died. I don't know, his name was Mujia or something. He was president of Uruguay for a while. And he was a politician that didn't sell out. He was a revolutionary and then a politician. And he didn't, live in a big mansion and live off the forced to tax money of the people, to live off the labor of others like a parasite, like almost every politician does. That's why politicians make money while they're in office far beyond their official salary. They steal. And they take money from corporations, and you get, state corporation conjunction is the definition of fascism, I believe. It's just everybody loses, and of course people lose because they tolerate it when they should actually be killing those politicians. Oops, I said something bad. Well, they're murdering the fuck out of millions of people around the world. They're incarcerating tons of people. They torture people. There's a long history of this. The worst criminal organizations are governments. So fuck them. We have to take control of that, because they're looking for them to win and for you to lose every fucking time. So this gets into, let's give you a really pragmatic situation. A person was talking about becoming a van lifer. She's going to get a van. She's going to travel around. Well, I like that kind of traveler. They bring their own house. They're people with some resources. They see cool shit. They're probably more interesting than the average person. I prefer van people more than like people have these massive RVs that is this huge house that guzzles gas and costs more to park it somewhere and can't go to cool places as easily. Van size seems really cool. And of course, I've hosted cyclists as well. So the thing is that this person asked, well, in the area that I live in, are there places where you can safely park your van and nobody bother you? The police don't bother you, criminals don't bother you. And so I responded, and I said, well, yeah, I have a big forest and I would love to share it, but I'm frightened of people. I didn't say that, but I am frightened of people. I did say, I want to figure out how to filter out the sociopaths. I've hosted tons of people, and I want to be more selective in figuring out who I invite. And I proposed a system, and I've talked about this in other videos, of filtering people, both hosts in this case and visitors, to make sure that they are matched up correctly. It's not necessarily that either one is bad even sometimes just a bad match. Same thing for romantic and intimate relations. Some people should just never be hooking up. They're absolutely incompatible. And so they make each other suffer by not selecting each other very well, not talking about what the expectations are, not creating a win-win relationship. And there's actually people who really get off on taking advantage of other people as a couple, as a visitor to a place. There's people who will go to a small vendor who just has a small garden and is scraping by selling a little bit of food, and they really enjoy getting that person down to the lowest price possible. I watched a rich chick from Germany do this. I shouldn't say people's nations because it's not actually relevant, but those folks have a nice fence over there. There's barbed wire on top. That's pretty cool. So both for the visitor and for the host, there should be reputation management. Because what people say, and this person responded, they were like, well, people, sociopaths are really attractive. They're good at, presenting a good person, and then they still are a sociopath and still fuck you over. And I think the only way to handle that is by having reputation management over time. So this person is good because they've been good for the last 6-8 years. And they have the references of other people who say, yeah, I've known that person a really long time. They're awesome. They will not screw you over. They're a wonderful person to be around, and then you get a net positive situation where everybody's winning, and then you get 20 people like that together, and everybody's safe, secure. You have space for creativity, enjoyment, trust, and it's a way funner environment. You know, people are empathetic. People are caring. People are looking, what can I create to create a better world? That's very different than a kind of person who is damaged from the world, you know, understandably perhaps. And, you know, they've learned to survive by taking advantage of other people. And of course, they think they're protecting themselves often. Like maybe they were abused as a child or young person. And so they've developed a survival strategy of fucking other people over. I understand that. But I don't want to be around those people. I can't fix them, usually. There might be options for that. But I want to start with people who are looking for those win-win situations and have levels of emotional self-control where they don't emotionally litter on other people, you know, where they really are compatible with the space. Because that's another thing is like, if we're going to create specialized spaces for particular things, then we have to make agreements around how that gets handled. If the space has kids, well, do you want your kid throwing arrows at people? The kid threw an arrow at me once. I had an archery thing, I had these visitors, and this spoiled little kid, growing up too rich, I told him, you know, this is a weapon, this is a dangerous object, right? Don't point it at people. You know, these are real things. And he's like maybe 12, I don't know. And so he starts throwing arrows around and also pointing the bow and arrow around, you know, and it's like he doesn't have weapons training. And his dad's just ignoring it. And I tell him, don't do that. And eventually I said to the kid, stop it, which is what his fucking parent should have been saying. But his parent wasn't doing his job. And then the parent was offended because I just, you know, spoke harshly with his untrained child who's going to grow up to be a prick. Sorry, asshole. So I do have some thoughts about how to do that, about how to implement that. Reputation management is one. Also having people fill out very long forms about their values and what they want, what they don't want, what they offer, what they need, so that we can match people up for win-win situations. Because I'm not saying that a person or a place is necessarily bad. I mean, some of them obviously are. But if they're just mismatched, right, then they shouldn't be mixing anything. Seems simple, except implementing that's going to be really hard.